Welcome to the JAMODI podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it.
The JAMODI podcast is powered by Sideline Interactive. Sideline Interactive is the leading manufacturer for high-quality, innovative scoring tables and LED video display boards that help coaches and schools bring more excitement to fans, create huge fundraising opportunities, and make their jobs easier. Visit sidelineinteractive.com to check out their amazing products.
So analytics are a big part of our game now, and I think most coaches are past the point of ignoring them, but how you use them is important. How do analytics, what role do they play in your coaching style?
I mean, they're big. Look, analytics is everything. When in any sport, any aspect of life, there's analytics involved. And I think to just turn away from them would be foolish. I think, going all in on them, I think also could be bad. There's a certain thing that I like to go with instinct a lot too. We might not like a certain shot in a certain area, but if the guy's having a good game, I mean, instinctually, let the guy kind of go in certain moments. But it's, I don't like early long twos. I think that's a lot of coaches now. There's some guys that will have the ability to take them because their percentages and practices and games have shown that. And so they have a little more leeway. You got to understand your role and where you're at in those aspects. But analytics is huge. I probably look at it a lot more on the defensive side than I do the offensive side. But I mean, the analytics with 3-pointers versus 2-pointers, you're obviously the closer to the basket, the higher percentage. And then the further out, that's why I like long twos. Not a lot of coaches like them because it's a long two, the percentage is lower, and you're going to be better off taking that three, because if you're equal in that area, the threes are worth more than two. So analytics is huge, particularly we look at it on the defensive side, what we want to take away, where we want to force shots. And so in terms of scouting and practice preparation, and then two is player tendencies. There's certain players, they have tells, what they're going to do. I mean, I can tell what a player is going to try to do every time. I think we were watching film one time on this guy, and, after about the second clip, it was like, he's going to do this baseline spin move every time he catches it right here. And every time, that's what he did. So we would use that and be like, hey, he's going to do this every time. Let's take it away. Understand you're going to do that. Now, it's one thing to make sure you practice it and talk about how you're going to guard something. It's another thing for the guys to actually execute it in games.
Yeah.
So I think if you're looking at analytics, that's good, but you got to be practicing and repping it pretty religiously.
Yeah, I think if right before the game, 3 minutes before in the locker room, you say, hey, watch out for a spin move. I don't know. Maybe you have a player smart enough, disciplined enough, or a team that can on the fly get that. And at the high school level, that's what I like about tournaments. I think tournaments really do show the IQ of our players because there's very little, if any, prep involved in that. And we are learning on the fly, fellas, of what these guys like to do, what they do well, and how we can attack them. I agree with you. I think the more people learn in different ways, hear it, see it, do it. And the more that we can incorporate all three of those ways using analytics, using film, and I just think that creates smarter players.
Yeah. It also gives you the accountability factor too. Like if you're prepping for a game all week and you've been talking about how you're going to guard this action or guard this player, and then you get to the game and they don't do it, it can be quite frustrating. So it's like, okay, clearly I don't know what you did in the million reps that we did going over this and our talks. And so it just happens. But that's an accountability thing. So, well, all right, we got to take this guy out. He's not getting it done. And hopefully the other guy will at least guard the guy the way we said to.
Coach, that's a huge point. My involvement with select ball, how little it was this last year, I was amazed at how either myself, other coaches wanted to hold our players accountable for things that we've never talked about, we've never taught. And on the fly, if those mistakes are happening on the floor, but you haven't practiced how to attack a 2-3 zone, you haven't practiced how we're going to play the post, or how we're going to guard ball screens, and mistakes are happening, you can get upset, but who should you get upset at? You. Like, you got to turn that right back around on yourself. Now, at your level, you have a lot of time, and you have great players. Like, every level of college basketball has amazing players at it and great coaches. So you guys get deep into things, but at the high school level too, any mistakes on the floor that are happening, we better make sure, if we're getting upset about those, that they are things that we're allowed to hold them accountable for. Because I don't think that's just everything. Everything on the floor I'm going to hold you accountable for. Okay, that means you've practiced and worked on all of those things.
Yeah. No, that's 100% true. I mean, if it's not something that we've been, on them about, then again, I only look at myself in those. And every coach should do this. You got to look at yourself first before you look at the team. Because if you're just getting mad at your team, you got to think about, what are you doing in these situations, and what are you trying to get across to them? What are they really gathering? How, you got to make sure you put the accountability on yourself first. I have a fun story on that stuff. So I did what I consider a no-no as a head coach, is trying to draw up a play out of a timeout that you've never done. And I remember this was last year. We're playing at University of Dallas, and we're down 4 with like a minute or so to go. And we're in a timeout, and we had 3 guys that were just playing phenomenal, right? And one of our better players just wasn't having a good game. So I'm sitting there, I'm turning to my assistant, what do we have that has these 3 guys involved in some action, whatever? And we're like, we're blanking. Well, the whole time I'm in a timeout, and I'm like, okay, we're going to do this. And I'm drawing something up, and I tell him what the reads are going to be as he comes off of it. And we break out of that timeout. I sit next to my assistant. I was like, that was really, really dumb. I shouldn't have done that. I put these guys in a bad spot. Don't ever do that. That's my fault. They go out, they execute it perfectly. Guy made a perfect pass, perfect read. We made the shot. I'm sitting there, I'm like, oh, okay, but never again. So they did this action like they had practiced it. I mean, that's again, the guys just had an understanding. I guess I explained it really well. I don't think so, but
Coach, first of all, man, I really appreciate you sharing that story, because when you started talking about that, I felt myself go, oh, thank you. Someone else has done that, not just me. But the difference in your story, though, is that it actually worked. I think most of the time when you try to do that, it doesn't work. And then you do just have to take full accountability in front of your team, which I feel like is a powerful moment, though. I don't think it's a bad thing for us to say, you know what, fellas, that's on me. Like, I missed the boat on that. The only problem is if that starts to happen multiple times, again and again, then you lose credibility, and you have to question then your competency in that moment.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty sure I even told the team after the game, like, 1, I was proud of them for executing, but 2, I was like, I should never put you guys in that position. It's like, but good job.
Yeah, but awesome job. Way to overcome. On that note of learning as a coach and maybe like self-evaluation, what are some things that you've done over the years to maybe recognize some of those blind spots that you have and grow and change? It could be with how you are in practice, how you handle things in games. What have you used?
Well, I mean, every year is, you get to the off season, it's time for reflection, how you felt like you did. I think it's important. One of the things I've learned is you gotta, my first 2 years as a head coach, we've done something different every year, and then we had injuries, and then it felt like I had to kind of go away from what we were trying to do. And I think that really cost us. And so that's one of those things where I'm looking at myself in that moment of, what are you doing? What are you trying to accomplish? What do you believe in? Stick to it. Don't give up. Don't just make a change for change's sake. Understand what you're trying to accomplish and stick to it. So that was a huge thing I've learned. A lot of that is just kind of my own self-evaluation. Some of that is listening to other coaches, reading books. And a lot of it too will also come from meetings with players, what they liked, what they didn't like, what could we have done better, getting their perspective on some things, I think is really important. But I think you just, with any profession, you got to constantly study up and look for areas to improve, and so there's a lot I've learned in the, first 2 years as a head coach. So I'd like to, as Coach Wacker used to say, you either win and enjoy it or you learn. And so I'm getting tired of learning.
I think I've learned a lot. I think it's good to go into each year with an area of growth, like a focus that you have. Like for me this year, it's while live gameplay is happening, controlling my nonverbal, my body. What am I trying to say?
Body language.
My body language. You know, when I stand, when I sit, what I do with my hands, do I droop? Because if our goal offensively is to get the best shot as fast as possible, I didn't say anything about make the shot, but just take the best shot as fast as possible. That if we do that, I should act the same way, whether we make or miss. And I've seen myself over the years watching film that if we miss a shot that I feel like we should have made, even though it's right within what we're going for, if we miss it, I don't yell at them. I don't say, just make a shot or anything like that, but I go sit down. And I sit down kind of the same way, almost like in a dejected way. And I'm wondering if I realize that pattern, how often or how soon until my players realize that pattern. What's one, if you don't mind sharing, maybe what's one area of growth that you would really like to focus on this year?
Man, that body language is probably a good one. I try not to be too reactive.
Yeah.
But it's funny that you talk about body language because, we talk with our guys, what is your body language in the class? Are you sitting down like, arms crossed like this? Are you wearing a hat? What do you, how that goes with our approach and our values, like how you are looking and being in a certain area screams, it might not be true, but what is the interpretation? Body language is, a huge amount of communication. And so if you're looking disinterested in the class, well, professor's going to not think that you care, and so you want to, sometimes fake it, act like if, you just got to kind of practice those habits, but we're all like that. Just, it's natural. It's unconscious. You're not thinking about it. But probably an area of growth for me would be not like I talked about, sticking to what we're doing, not necessarily, I don't like the term giving up, but trying to change something for change's sake. Like you got to
be careful with those adjustments.
Yeah. I want to be more consistent in like, this is what we're doing. This is how we're doing it. And then go from there. Best thing, talk about learning. I was watching, I think Sean Miller was talking about this, and he talked about the 80-20 rule. 80% you're focused on the things that your non-negotiables, how you're going about doing things, what you're going to do. And then the 20% is adjustments, whether it be in-game adjustments or adjustments made through scout. And that really kind of stuck with me because I'm like, okay, I was probably 20-80, but I want to get, that's where I'm going out with this year is like, hey, we're going to stick with this. We're not, regardless of what's going on, we got to be consistent what we're doing. The other thing with, 2 years, and again, injuries really played a big part of this, but I can't say that I've really had consistent lineups. And I think that can really impact the players. I'm not thinking of it from that standpoint, or I wasn't, but I think it's very true. You've got to have that consistency. Otherwise you have different lineups going in every time. And again, some of that was injury related, but also some of it was this guy was just ticking me off this week because he didn't look good and this other guy looked good. So you make those changes. And I saw something with John Wooden that talked about that with, don't make change for change's sake. Have an idea of what your lineup's going to be, stick with them till the game's won or lost. And then as time goes on, then you can talk about, another player getting an opportunity if some of these guys haven't been producing, but can't promise those things. But it was really good for me to kind of read that stuff because those are, again, learning growth. As a head coach, I think those are big things for me.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.